Hello, thank you for watching the Of Interest or listening to the Of Interest podcast. We're joined today by Labour Finance spokesperson Grant Robertson. Thank you for coming on.
Hey Dan, good to be here.
You've come fresh from releasing your fiscal plan this morning. It all fits very nicely within the operating allowances you set yourself. Congratulations.
Well, yeah, that was the goal, so good.
I guess the bigger concern is whether the cost pressures that New Zealand will face over the next 4 years will also fit in those operating allowances. What analysis have you done on that, and how are you so confident?
Well, let's take probably one of the biggest chunks of it, and that's health. So what we've used is what the Treasury, working with the Ministry of Health and Te Whatu Ora, have developed as what they believe is the baseline for us to be able to meet cost pressures. They actually published that in the preview, so everybody could see it. So we've included that within the cost pressures. So that's, that gives us confidence. We've also added to that with the commitments we've made during the election campaign in health. So there's other spending around farm ag and training doctors and dentists and so on, plus the big dental promise as well. In other areas, we can look at what we've been able to do in the past and say we can meet that. So education's a good example. The biggest cost in education is salaries, and we've dealt with that because we've just done a teacher's pay claim for that. We put about $150 million a year for cost pressures into education. We can easily do that within the remaining space that we've got, and actually probably a little bit more as well. It will be tight though, and I think everyone needs to be realistic about that. This is going to be a period of consolidation fiscally. I've been signalling that for some time now. It's the reason why we've been doing the savings exercise that we've been doing. And so nobody should be expecting big spending over the next couple of budgets, because we have to now consolidate after what we needed to do with COVID and then the cost of living crisis.
But you're confident that you won't need to go over and above those allowances?
I am.
At least in the foreseeable.
And then there's always the caveat, which is that, we set an allowance in December 2022, and then we had New Zealand's second biggest ever natural disaster with the Auckland anniversary weekend floods and Cyclone Gabrielle. So you always have to be aware that you might need to do something there, but these are the allowances that we know we need to be able to fit those fiscal goals we've got, and it does add up to do that.
Labour's biggest election policy, at least by cost, is the GST policy. It's near universally panned by experts. It doesn't seem to have won you any votes. Why not scrap it and put that money towards something more effective?
Oh, look, this is something that will matter to a lot of people. And I know for economists, they look at it and say, well, $5 a week. We know for some of those people that will make a difference. It'll mean that they will go and get fruit and vegetables rather than skipping that when they go to the supermarket. But it's also one element of a wider plan. And obviously the numbers aren't as big, but because programs like Working for Families are more targeted, we are boosting that. In fact, the boost to the in-work tax credit's a very significant one, which affects, more than 100,000 families who are actually going to benefit from that. So when you put all of the different cost of living bits together, I think we've got a good package there. GST of fruit and vegetables is something that I often hear about when I'm going around in the community, and so I think it will be welcomed by people.
And you think that it will be passed on by the supermarkets?
Well, that's obviously the challenge, isn't it? And we've put in place the Grocery Commissioner, that person's job, and it's not just one person, by the way, they've got quite a substantial team at the Commerce Commission. Their job is to make sure that our supermarkets are behaving well and behaving in a way that isn't anti-competitive. We're going to be giving them this job to do. It doesn't mean they walk around the supermarket, but they do have access to information, the ability to compel it if they need to. So that's what has given me the confidence that there is the best possible shot of the benefit being passed on.
The Taxpayers Union thinks you have underestimated the cost by about $400 million.
The Taxpayers Union is wrong, and that shouldn't surprise anybody out there, as a front as it is for the National Party and the ACT Party. We, in fact, have costed it quite conservatively. We've effectively said that the whole value, that people will effectively reinvest the entire savings that they get into this. If they choose to spend their money on something other than fresh fruit and vegetables, actually our costings will be conservative because they'll be buying something that does have GST attached to it. So we've already baked that in. They've in fact somehow or other weirdly tried to double that, which I just don't think makes any sense.
I guess they're thinking people might choose to buy fresh fruit and vegetables instead of a processed food.
But that's right, and we've already factored that into our costings.
My big question is, will you release those costings?
So basically, it's very simple, and I mean, there's no need to release anything. We did it on the day that we announced the policy. We've taken what the expenditure there is in the household expenditure survey on fresh fruit and vegetables, or fruit and vegetables generally, and simply extrapolated that out.
And you think that adequately accounts for any possible behavioural change?
It does, because we've effectively said all of that will actually end up being spent on fruit and vegetables.
But you're not tempted? There's huge demand among the public for spreadsheets right now.
Spreadsheets are huge in this campaign.
Very popular. Okay, here's a different question. What, in your opinion, is the optimal level of debt for New Zealand to have?
So we've set ourselves a ceiling rather than an optimal level, and I think one of the things I've learned from being Minister of Finance, because I did come in with a commitment at that 20% under the old measure, 20% is the target. I think setting an individual target like that has potential for perverse outcomes. Setting a ceiling really says, we know that when we took that on Treasury's advice as well, I might say the 30% on the new measure, means that we've got a big buffer. We're sitting at 18 at the moment, expected to spike up 21, 22%, still gives us that buffer. So rather than say there's an optimum level here, there's some room for us to move. And I did say when we set the fiscal rules in 2022, we also needed to think about how we used our balance sheet better in New Zealand to support infrastructure development, adaptation work, which we did with the National Resilience Plan. So, it's about a balance, but no specific number now, but a ceiling that we know we need to stay under.
I feel like this has been lost in the communication of that ceiling. People think of it as being a level upon which we cannot go above.
No.
But my understanding is that it's a level that we shouldn't go above in normal times,
Correct.
in good times.
You could go above it. You wouldn't want to be there for very long, was Treasury's advice, essentially. But yeah, you're absolutely right. But I think it's we can, where we are, because New Zealand's debt has been historically so low and is still very low relative to the rest of the world, it is not a stress for the ratings agencies for us to be bouncing around the period we are, the 18, 20%. In fact, they really welcome that. So plenty of room if the worst were to happen again.
So we can't maintain a higher debt level, but we can maintain this debt level should we wish to invest more.
Correct, and of course we have. We've taken that decision over the last little while.
Okay, so if we had another pandemic, Christchurch earthquake, global financial crisis, we could actually afford to go up to 40, 50%?
If we had to. But I think everybody acknowledges it's not desirable, it's not what you want to do. But in a crisis, the government will always step in and do things, and I think it's important that New Zealanders have confidence about that. Our economy is resilient. The reason we can do that is because the underpinnings of it are strong. But there's also some obligation on a Minister of Finance, I believe, to be careful and to make sure that we don't unnecessarily strain the New Zealand economy, especially at a time when the cost of borrowing is quite high. Now, that will come down over time, but it is high at the moment.
Yep, okay. Changing tact again, you gave the Reserve Bank a dual mandate in 2019. Why did you think that was necessary? National now wants to scrap it. Yeah. And if it was necessary, why do you think it should stay?
I think it's important that monetary policy does its main job, its central job, which is price stability. And when you actually read, the agreement that we've signed, the financial remit that we've signed with, the monetary policy remit that we've signed with the Reserve Bank, you will see that we say you've got your job is price stability, keep between 1% and 3%. But we also believe that when decisions are being taken about that, the broader economy also needs to be borne in mind. And when we looked around the world at the US and Australia and England, the best proxy for how can you think about what the broader economy looks like was employment. And so we adopted that as those other countries had it in their jurisdictions. We don't say you must keep employment at a particular place. It just says you must try to support maximum sustainable employment. So we've recognised within what we've done the slightly different roles that the Reserve Bank has, but actually we do think it's important. Now, at what moment in our history does it become very significant? That time is probably to come. Adrian Orr's made clear that actually in the period we've been in since the mandate changed, they wouldn't have changed an individual decision because of that. But I really welcome it. We're now seeing way more debate about employment and discussion about, what is the right way to measure it? How do we understand it? To me, that's a big step forward for us, and I wouldn't want us to go backwards. There's no problem here. The Reserve Bank knows what its job is, and if the Federal Reserve can do it, and the Reserve Bank of Australia can do it, and to a certain extent the Bank of England can do it, then I think RBNZ can do it as well.
Because do you worry about a scenario in which the Reserve Bank might keep inflation in the lower half of the target range and let employment sit a little bit higher, like perhaps happened in 2014?
Yeah, look, and obviously they didn't have the
time,
agreement we had then. That will be a decision for them, and I don't draw myself into those individual decisions. I also think people are perfectly capable of weighting objectives, understanding where we are. And so those decisions they'll make at the time. And if they have to, I remember when we brought this in, people from the States had said, from time to time you do have to make a bit of a trade-off. That's the nature of a decision-making body like the Reserve Bank.
So you don't think that the dual mandate or any of the other extracurriculars the Reserve Bank have done are responsible for inflation?
I don't know. And I think when you call them extracurriculars, again, talking and thinking about climate and its impact on our economy is a very sensible thing for the Reserve Bank to be doing.
That's a whole other topic. We can get into that another time. Last week at the debate, your boss revealed he bought his first home at 24. How old were you?
Oh, no, I have to do my calculations. So
roughly is fine.
Roughly in my early 30s.
In your
maybe
early 30s.
32.
Okay.
31.
That sounds like a number that could plausibly still be achieved today. 24, much less so, I think, in shared rentals all across the country. There was a gasp of dismay.
How could you do that? Look, you'd have to ask the Prime Minister the circumstances in which he did that.
Well, I guess my question is, Labour came in with a housing mandate, arguably, and have not managed to make much progress, if any, on housing affordability. Is that a dream New Zealanders should give up on?
Oh, look, I still want to see New Zealanders be able to buy their own home. And the good news is that the first home buyer percentage is up. I think
that's a proportion.
Yeah, well, exactly.
Yeah.
But that's important because we've tried to alter the market so that first home buyers do get a fairer go. I think that's a reasonable thing for us to be measured on. Overall, obviously, we need to keep building more houses. We need to make sure that we have that mix of affordable housing and other housing right. It's a big journey for New Zealand to do that. We also do need to understand that a big chunk of New Zealanders are renters, and many of them will stay as renters. Now, I want as many people as possible to be able to own their own home. We've also got a job of work to do to protect people who do rent long term. So we've made some of those changes as well. So no, I think we've made progress in housing, definitely more to do.
Name check some policies that you have done for renters, because Hipkins basically said it wasn't okay that 1 in 3 were renters and that he wanted the New Zealand to be a nation of home owners.
Sure, and that's the goal, but we have to support and protect the renters. So what have we done? We've made sure that no-fault evictions got taken out. We've made sure that you can only raise the rent once in 12 months. We've got rid of letting fees. We have done a number of things to support renters, and particularly around the quality of rental properties and the work that we've done around standards there. So I think we have done a good piece of work in that space, as ever, more to do, but I do think, when you look at the alternative here, we're going to see a government that wants to get rid of interest deductibility, wants to bring Bright Line back down to 2 years. That's going to really hammer first home buyers. Wants to bring foreign buyers back into the market, which will severely inflate the housing market. So I think our record on housing stands up pretty well against a group of people who are actually going to make things much harder for first home buyers and don't seem to support many of the changes we made on for renters.
Do you ever worry some core voters might hear that National is going to pump up house prices and think, oh good, I'll vote for them?
Look, who knows whether that will be attractive for some people. And I think actually one of the things about housing that I've noticed over the years is you often have grandparents, parents really concerned about their kids. So no, I think most people will be able to step back and say the kinds of policies National's promising actually will make the housing market far worse for many people. National
thinks the economy is in very bad shape. Tell me, is the economy fundamentally broken, or is it still just recovering from the pandemic?
The New Zealand economy is resilient, and the New Zealand economy has been given the tick of approval by external ratings agencies and the IMF for that matter, although they have their concerns. The fundamentals, the underpinnings are extremely strong. We've been buffeted like every economy in the world has, and for particular reasons sometimes worse than other economies. But I'm seeing economic data now that's showing me that we have turned that corner and that actually we're on a path now where the economy will consolidate and we will be able to see good growth, particularly at the end of the forecast period.
Can we wrap up with just a few quick-fire questions?
Sure.
Who is your economics or public finance hero?
Michael Cullen.
Michael Cullen. What do you consider your greatest accomplishment so far?
Oh, I think steering New Zealand through COVID and coming out the other end with an economy nearly 8% bigger and unemployment under 4%.
I remember we were very worried about economic scarring from job losses, and it seems we've avoided that altogether.
Yeah, that's right.
What is one goal you'd still like to accomplish?
I want to see us meet our climate change goals. I think that's significant for the economy and the environment.
What is something you used to believe but no longer do? Don't say wealth tax.
No, I still believe that. I think my set of values has been consistent. I think probably one of the things I've learned over 6 years as finance minister is that you can't achieve the things at the pace that you want to because events happen, and that's life.
So you have to learn to be more patient. What is one thing, personal or professional, that you spent too much money on but you do not regret?
God, that's a good question. Too much money on, but I don't
For me, it's like a very expensive pottery mug. It costs way too much, but I get so much joy from drinking from it.
Yeah. What would that be? This is not good podcast material, as I think about what it's going to be. I think probably I probably spent more money on stereo equipment than, but I get a great deal of joy.
Right. Could you really notice the sound quality difference?
I can hear it.
Okay, final question. How often do you think about the Roman Empire?
Not a lot nowadays.
Grant Robertson, thank you for coming on.
Cheers, Dan.
Appreciate it a lot.